So here starts the video recording. As I said earlier, it would be entirely in English since it's targeted towards international audience, and it will be concerning triangle strategies characters in a specific way. Most of the tier lists I watched already in the internet that are available from multiple content creators are made in the context of the characters being used in New Game Plus, mostly hard mode, but New Game Plus for sure. And that would be the way that the most seasoned players that are usually going to create those tier lists, that's the way they would be playing the game the most. But I would like to make a different tier list that will be concerning the tier list, the characters. It will be concerning the characters, but in the sense of how useful they are for completing the game 100%. And by that I would mean to get the 4 different endings, plus get all the characters upgraded to the maximum. That's the upgrades from Jens. I would not be buying rings and stuff. I completed the game's separate endings mostly in normal. I grinded somewhat in hard, but yeah, my tier list would be concerning completing the game and the usefulness of the character for that sake alone. I would be more specific and will go in details as to how the characters are useful for that, but I would not be I would try to rate the characters mostly the score, the final score would not be cumulative. That's what I mean. The final score, if a character has a single specific role, but it's something that you'll need pretty much every map, or if it's something that you'd basically be 100% sure to need, then even if it's just a single role, it would be enough for this game to be, for this character to be, I would say, Supreme. Supreme might be the rank that's named not great. I would rename those categories. I would I'll have those 5 categories. I don't really like the letter categories for tier lists like that, because they are not self-explanatory as the categories that I wanted to implement. So broken would be characters that just break the game, that make the game unfair in your unfair for the enemy, unfair in your favor. Primary would be characters that are or could be used in pretty much every case. Good would be characters that are very usable but are not sure to be used for the most part. Occasional would be characters that might have some usage, but you would not really want to overuse. And horrible would be characters that are pretty much either useless or not even occasionally usable. Characters that might see some usage, but that would not be very helpful in general. Occasional differs to horrible because the characters in occasional might be specialists that see usage in some specific cases that make them very useful in some specific cases, but that are mostly unusable. And horrible are the same people, but that do not have those occasional cases of usability. I would consider a few points as to how usable a character is, and those are raw strength or strength of damage dealing, strength of supporting characters, strength of canceling the enemies, strength of general utility even, strength in battle, should I say. And by strength in battle I mean, yeah, how strong the character's presence would be felt. Then I would certainly have to consider availability. Characters that are readily available and that do not obstruct other characters' usability would be rated higher in that regard, because we are talking about completing the game. If you cannot use the character for the most part anyway, it won't be too useful. And then for sure I would have to consider not only that kind of availability, but I would have to consider how costly using a character is. And by that I would mean if the character would need to use consumable items, it would surely degrade their score vastly, because in my experience I finished the 4 endings and then I had to grind a little to get all of my characters to max up their stats and skills. So wasting items would be a no-no. Skills that require money would be not great. Characters that would need to not do anything to recharge their TP would certainly be not a great indicator of usability for the character. I'm not sure how to name that subcategory, but yeah, that would be something that I would consider as well. So that being said, these are the most important things that I would consider, and then let us start with the first character, Benedict. So Benedict is a specific character. Benedict, at least to me, grows stronger the stronger your party is. And by that I mean that Benedict is a great support character. Benedict would have skills that make your other characters great, but for the most part, at least by himself, he is not a good character. I would say if we considered working alone, Benedict would have been a horrible character for me. But he has some very usable skills, but they are not enough to compensate for his mediocre stats and pretty much non-existent damage output. But in this case, Benedict would be a good character, because in the first playthrough Benedict is okay-ish, but then on, when he gets the Dragon Shield, when your characters would be when they get the full benefit of the twofold turn, when acting the skill now is very useful to get your nukers in shape and start their turn immediately. Or even he's very useful in a specific case when you need to grind money. I found I felt that it's a very obvious thing, but I used a specific setup to grind money. I took the idea from other streamers and then finished it myself with my party that I liked. Benedict, Frederica, and Lionel. I used those 3 characters to farm money in the level 23 arena. Basically, Frederica had the Vanguard scarf and the golden pinky amulet or whatever. Then she gets battle cry, she casts meteor or whatever the name was for that final skill, and then you set in tandem to Benedict, then Benedict now to Frederica, and she kills pretty much everyone except one guy. If you put Benedict inside the arena, you make the mage that survives cast a spell over Frederica and Lionel, and then you sleep the guy with Lionel and just get all the coins, all the packages. So Benedict is getting useful later on. He is available from the get-go, and he does not really require too much to be used. His TP recharges 1 at a turn, and he needs pretty much 3 TP to be useful. 3 TP for now and 4 TP for the Dragon Shield. Those are the 2 skills I use the most. Q-Fold turn I did not find to be that useful, honestly, because my main concern in this playthrough was the TP management, and characters rarely manage to stack enough TP for 2 consecutive attacks. So basically those are the 2 skills that are most useful in the sense of completing the game, and they are really good, especially now. Now was the skill that I used the most, except the first map, when you cannot choose your party and you have to be the bandits, Trish and her father, whatever the name of the guy was, I forgot the name. I would have to check the name, by the way, because it's not serious to not know his name. Travis, yeah. So yeah, except in that case when I used the Dragon Shield, pretty much Benedict was the now character. That's the most useful skill I used. Frederica would be a good character. I would not say she's primary, because she is borderline primary, but she's more likely to be skipped than other characters are going to be likely to be skipped. Frederica is a great damage dealer. She might be the best single target damage dealer in the game. Later on, Avlora is second to her, but Avlora needs to be very close to the enemy to deal too much damage. Frederica is not great at dealing damage to multiple targets. Yeah, she has the meteor the meteor skill, but meteor requires her to not act at all, and then to skip the next turn. And by not acting, I mean she needs to charge the skill, and the enemies will be they will just avoid your area of effect. That's not a great skill, honestly. It deals a lot of damage and is great for the end level grind, but that's not too useful of a skill. Honestly, I used her mostly for the Scorch and the Blazing Chains, and for the occasional usages of Flame Shield, which is great for characters like your tanks, for example, Flanagan or Erador, or even in my case Serenoa, who is not really a tank but had some tanky functions in my playthrough. Frederica picks up earlier, she never falls down in power. but I would not say she's a primary usage case character. Roland, I would say he's occasional. Why? Roland is a great single target damage dealer. He might be almost as good as Avlora when it comes to physical damage, because his most useful skill, the 4 dragons, would pretty much obliterate anything but bosses. But the 4 dragon skills requires a lot of TP. His most of his skills, for example the double thrust, are not that great as risky maneuvers that Avlora have for the pretty much the same level of cost. So you'll basically be using Roland in specific cases, either when he's mandatory or when you need more movement heavy options, more characters that move faster, because Avlora is not as fast as Roland. But I did not find chasing and trying to destroy specific targets too useful in this game. Of course, there are maps where the boss is the primary target, and when it's killed, the map's over. And in that case, Roland is good because he can just ride the horse, 4 dragons the enemy, and the enemy is down. Roland prevails. But that's not the best strategy in my opinion for the most part, and especially considering when you're pretty much newer in the game, you do not know the maps too well, you cannot really own the maps the way a seasoned player could. You would not like to risk charging straight into the enemies. So Roland was very good in my first playthrough, but he gradually downgraded in my later playthroughs to the point where I could have finished the entire playthrough without using Roland, and it would not have been an issue at all. Jiwa, I would say, Jiwa I would say would be good or primary, but she's borderline primary. No, I would even say she's primary, because Jiwa is pretty much mandatory for your first playthrough. Healing is great in your first playthrough. Compared to items, it's better in your new game. In New Game Plus, it got as good, a little better than items. It's still a little better than items, but it's restricted to certain characters. Of course, items could be used by anyone, but as I said, you'd like to not use items in your playthroughs because you need to stack the money for the completion criteria anyway. So the more you use items, the more you need to grind, which makes a character bad. So Jiwa is your cheapest healer. Jiwa could heal a single target for pretty much 50% of their health every turn. Jiwa could mass heal at a distance for 2 TP, which means that Jiwa plus Julio could guarantee a bunch of your party surviving for a while. Julio, not Julio. Why I said Julio, I'm not sure. So Jiwa pretty much was mandatory in my first playthrough and was a pretty good character then on. She is very versatile. She can make your characters take less damage. Not really take less damage, but she can hasten them so that they can be more readily active. She can remove statuses, which is not that great because removing statuses is cheaper than healing. in healing for HP, I mean, because the status removal items are very cheap, honestly. So it would be better for statuses to be removed immediately. So the skill to remove statuses, status conditions, states, or whatever you want to call them, I did not really use that much. But the cheap heal, I mean, heal wounds and the mass heal sanctuary, I use pretty much all the time. Jiwa was one of my primary characters through the entire game. She rarely was less useful than Cordelia, and those cases, they were few and far between. And when I used Cordelia, I used her with in tandem with Jiwa, because I needed more healing to survive either huge waves or to have a certain character be super tanky and then storm the enemy with a lot of damage with the other characters. Ana is occasional. Ana starts as one of the most broken characters in the game. Ana starts as pretty much the most broken character for the first half of the game, but then she drops down in power, and I could not figure out why that's the case. Ana could do 2 actions in a turn, which by itself should be amazing, but I picked up why Ana is not that great after the first playthrough. And there are 2 reasons. Ana's damage is not that great. Ana's damage never was that great in the first place. Sorry, but Ana's damage was very dependent on the poison she managed to deal. And the specific thing with poison is that it deals 10% damage to the enemy, 10% of their health, which is amazing. But the poison is limited to 30 damage per turn, and most of the enemies go over 300 health points in the end. They are like 500 points, so the poison damage downgrades from 10% damage to about like 6% or 5% damage, which is not that great, which is not really that great. And basically her main weapon, poison damage, really drops, it falls down a cliff after the first playthrough, when pretty much all of the characters are above level 30 something. So Ana became an occasional character. She is very good at sniping enemies. She is very good at mission 16 when you need to defuse the bombs. She is amazing at that. She is great when you need to, for example, climb edges and obstruct enemy archers' visibility, or when you need to assassinate enemy archers or stuff like that, or even infiltrate enemy lines. She's great at that, but she's not a great damage dealer, and that matters a lot. So she became an occasional character for my following playthroughs, and that's that. Erador is a primary character. Erador was my main tank, and you could not tell me otherwise. Erador plus the amulet that protects from backstabbing, if I'm correct, he needed an amulet for that. Erador is amazing with that amulet. He's very vulnerable. No, he doesn't even need an amulet for that, if I'm correct. Yeah, he has that from a skill. I'm almost sure about it. Anyway, Erador is amazing because he can pretty much tank any physical damage, and he could really just not care too much about anything physical done to him, especially when he kings shields. he could not tank magical damage too much, but no character really could tank magical damage. That's the main thing of the magical damage. Erador would be your greatest tank option because he could use the King Shield, he could drag all the enemies towards him, then one of your mages could AoE damage all of them, and you could have a great start of the battle only by using Erador and one mage. You could get a great advantage only by those two characters, or even only by Erador, for the sake of being able to position your characters without getting any trouble from the enemy. So Erador's a primary character. He got even better in later playthroughs because even the enemies were able to nuke your characters when they were not acting stupid. So Erador was great to not allow your mages to die in 2 hits, to drag the enemies far away from your mages. Huet is a primary character as well. Huet, she I would say is one of your best characters, even because she could by herself win some maps. She could by herself, by her ability to fly, win some maps without the enemy being able to do anything. She could just climb something like a house or a wall and just kill the enemies with her arrows. She could shadow what was the name? Shadow Stitching Arrow, if I'm correct. That's her most important skill in my opinion. She could blind the enemy. I started using blind later on in my playthrough because it's very reliable. A little more than Shadow Stitching Arrow, but Shadow Stitching Arrow was her main skill because it damages the enemy a lot more than the blind and even than the usual arrow, and it could immobilize the enemy for 2 turns or 3 turns if you use the skill that I used from her abilities. So Huet is a great kiter. She's great at kiting the enemy. She's great at immobilizing them. She was one of my primary characters for the campaign. Same goes for Corentin, but Corentin, he's somewhere between primary and good for me because he did not start great. Corentin did not start great because he was easily killable. He was the most squishable of all the characters. But later on, Corentin became very good, and I would say might have become the best damage dealer when it comes to massive damage, because Glacial Moon is your best AoE skill and it's fantastic. Corentin does not really need to wait in order to be able to deal damage, because in the start of the battle he can position himself somewhere and cast like a massive cold damage to the ground and just stand on the ground, and he will recharge TP 1 each turn for standing on the cold ground, and it would even be usable for protecting him from the enemies because they would be less likely to hit him when he is when they are on cold ground, but when he's in the middle of a cold spot, they would need to be on a cold ground to hit him. So Corentin would be one of your main massive damage dealing options. He's great at killing a lot of enemies at once. So basically one of your best mages. I'm not sure if Rudolph... I would say Rudolph is... for now, all of these characters, except Corentin, were readily available from the get-go. So from now on, Corentin would be easily gettable from the third mission, same goes from Rudolph, for Rudolph. But I would say Rudolph is less usable, to the point that he becomes actually occasional. Rudolph has a great skill that is his... no, I would say maybe he's good. Maybe he's good. I did not use Rudolph that much, but Rudolph could be easily gotten from the third mission, and he does pretty much a lot of damage from distance with his arrow. He has a massive arrow rain storm, but that could not trigger follow-up attacks from your party members, which is not that great. But his rain of arrows plus his trap are very good at dealing with the enemy. I did not find his other skills too useful, but those two were very useful, and he's a good character. I would not say he's primary at all. I did not use him as much because I did use a lot of the other characters more than him, but he was very good and useful. Serenoa, I would say, is a strange character. I would say he is good, borderline primary. Why? Because Serenoa is your main character, the game makes you use him more, and you get more familiar with what his boundaries are, and more familiar as to how to be to get the most of him. So I would say Serenoa gets complimented by the game for being a mandatory character, and I would say if I did not need to use Serenoa in pretty much every mission, I might not have gotten him as strong, because I used had Serenoa use the revive amulet, which made him not only one of my main damage dealers when it comes to physical damage, with the Hog Dive, which is a great skill, and it's a pretty much a distance damage even. He's pretty much an archer with the Hog Dive, short targeted archer. He managed to counterattacks, to do counterattacks. I'm not sure if that's a skill or if I used an amulet, but that would even prove my point even more. I made Serenoa great. I made him a primary character because I knew he would be a primary character. If I did not for sure need to use Serenoa, I might not have gotten as much usage of him, and he might not have seemed as a great character. He would have been just a very good character. I would say way better than Benedict, who might really be the worst of those three. He even might have been better than Frederica. If we need to arrange those characters, I might say that's the way. I'm not sure, maybe that way. But yeah, if I did not like mandatorily need to use Serenoa, I might not have used him as much. Julio, I would say he is occasional. He might be better than the other two occasional characters. Inheritor is a hell of a skill, just granting all of the other characters your entire TP. He is very easy to get Julio because he needs just 275 morality and 110 utility, which is pretty much guaranteed to get by like chapter 6 or 7 in your first playthrough. So Yulio, his inheritor skill would come to, we would come to talk about this skill later on, but yeah, it's one of his greatest assets. Best Regards is very good because it's a non-physical damage, which is great to snipe some heavy warriors, and he does a lot of damage as well. He's not really great for anything else. So I would say Yulio, a good character, not a great character. Hosobara. I would really want to say Hosobara is occasional, but she's actually horrible. Hosobara was very useful in the first like 5 or 10 chapters of my first playthrough. Her Be Brave skill was second to Gila's Sanctuary. It might have even healed more health points than the Sanctuary skill, but it does not heal Hosobara, and you need to be pretty much near your party members, which is not great because that makes Hosobara vulnerable to attacks. She is not great at taking pierce damage. Pikemen would kill her easily. She is not that great at dealing damage. I could not find a great usage for her follow-up abilities. I would actually have liked to not give her that score, but she's actually a horrible character. I needed to use her to level her up, and I wanted to use all my characters. I used her when she was said to be suggested by the game, but I never found her terribly useful, and she actually is the first horrible character. Narf, I would say he's good. Narf would be just below Frederica. Narf starts as my favorite mage in the first playthrough, and maybe even the second playthrough, the first New Game Plus playthrough, until you get to level 50. Narf does a good damage with his Spark ability. He does very good damage with his Whirlwind ability. His Whirlwind ability, he has huge range with that. As far as I remember, higher range than Ezana. And he has a Sanctuary skill. Sanctuary, as I said, besides Narf being readily available from the get-go, pretty much as available as Yulio and Hosobara, I managed to use Narf mostly for maps that I needed to be sure that I'm prepared. Narf is a great toolbox in that sense that he has utility by healing your characters, and he has a way to decrease magical defense. He has good damage in all of the separate elements. So when you start your first playthrough or second playthrough, you would not really know the maps that much. You would need to be safe, and in order to be safe, you need your characters to be self-sufficient for the most part. Narf is not great at managing his TP. That's his main weakness. Narf absolutely must need to wait, because each of his skills requires 2 TP, but Narf could heal once each second turn, which is great in maps you really don't know. Also, he is a great damage dealer, especially for your first and second playthroughs. Later on, his damage is not really enough, unless you are talking about the Spark. He's pretty much very usable for the maps like the one you kill General of Laura, and the one you kill Kamzo in the end, the salt mines. All of those maps, the salt deposit, I mean the source. All of those maps you would really find him very useful because of the lightning skill. And because the lightning hits all the characters in the same water pool. But otherwise, Narf starts great and he would be very useful in your first few playthroughs, but not as useful when you know the game and when your characters pick up and develop more. So he's useful but not as useful. Jens would be good because he's very great occasionally and okay in the other cases. I would say Jens might even be might even be less better than Frederica, I would say, but he has a lot of very good skills. He has the spring trap skill that could pretty much make a boss lose a turn, which is a great thing. When the boss got hit by a trap, or any enemy for that matter, they lose their turn. Then he has Slumber Strike, which is okay-ish, but could not be used in tandem with a follow-up party member, because the enemy would be awakened, pardon me. And Jens is not really great at damage dealing. He does not have that much of a damage, so he starts as a weak character. You could easily take him. You need 450 morality. You could actually take him easily in your party by the first fourth of your first playthrough even. And you actually could make him very useful, especially for his ladders in some of the later maps, to get your archers to a higher position and to make the enemy AI take bad decisions and to block the ladders and stuff like that. You can spring traps, which is good. The only thing you could not do is damage deal, and that's enough to make him not as great. Lionel, I would say he's occasional. I would not say he's good for anything but doing money or later stages of the game cancelling enemies. Lionel is really easy to get. He requires 400 utility, pretty much even less requirements than Jens, but he does not do as much damage unless you want to spend a lot of TP. He does not have too much utility unless you want to spend a lot of TP. Sorry, he could do a lot of damage if you spend a lot of money, but that's a no-go in your in the case I'm talking about. I'm of course talking strictly about completing the game 100%, and you don't want to waste as much money on a single skill. That's totally a no-go. Never use that skill in my playthrough, even have not seen how it looks. Lionel is great for taking enemy bags though, enemy spoils. Lionel is great at that because he gathers extra 1000 coins, and that makes him occasionally good for grinding and nothing more. If you manage to drag Lionel through all of the missions and have him collect all of the spoils, that might as well makes your playthroughs harder, but make them less challenging in the sense that they would just make you not require the final grind I needed. But yeah, I would say he's occasionally good. Piccoletta, I would say she's occasionally good as well. She needs 450 liberty to be taken, and she is not that hard to use, but the two good things that Piccoletta has are the decoy, which is great. It's separate character that you spawn for 3 TP. All of the enemies target that decoy, pretty much all of the enemies, which is great. You can manipulate enemy behavior with that. Piccoletta has a lot of evade. In my opinion, without taking a look at the tables, she might have either the best or the second best evade. Not sure what the name of the stat was, but yeah, she might have the best dodge in the game. And those are the two useful skills, I think. Bolt toss is not bad. It's a attack from distance, but it takes your precious TP, and you need the TP to cast the decoy, which is the main reason you would like to use Piccoletta for, like decoy. Medina, I would say she's occasional. She's the best occasional character by far, but she's occasional. Why? Medina is very good, and she might be one of the best characters in the sense of New Game Plus hard mode. If you do not have to take your money into consideration, she might be one of the most useful characters because of her. For example, she could use items, healing items, but not only. She could use items from a higher distance, and also when she uses a healing item on your characters, she heals them an additional TP point. So when she uses a range heal, you pretty much give 5 characters an additional TP, which is amazing. It is amazing. She is occasionally hyper useful for beating bosses like Kamzel, or if you would like to use her for the for bosses like the Hierophant, for example, or even Idor. She would be great. Even the map with Avlora, when you could just use Narf and Ezana to strike the fountain with the thunder spells, that's amazing. That's pretty much amazing. But you would really not like to spend any money in that playthrough. You would really not like to use usable items in that playthrough, in any of those 4 playthroughs, because you would need the additional grind in the end anyway. So basically Medina is not that great in that case, in that specific case. Otherwise she's a greatly strong character, but she is not sustainable. That's a great name. Sustainability. She is readily available early on, because she needs 500 morality and 400 liberty. That's not hard to get, but she is not sustainable because she basically needs to use items for anything, and that's not really great for completing the game. Ezana, I would say, is occasional. Maybe like here. Yeah, here. Ezana does good damage with lightning. She has a lot of paralyze. She could do some wind damage. That's not really great. Has a lot less distance than Narf has. She could do some rituals that could obstruct the enemy's archers, for example, but they would obstruct your archers as well, so you need to take that in account. So Ezana is not really great in the sense that you would not be able to use her primary when you do not know the map and when you do not know the enemies, because you would not like to risk using her and getting no archers in the map and then just being put in a bad position by the enemy because of not using the archers you would like to use in general, like Huet, for example. So she's not such a great character because she does not have too many options, in my opinion. And also she's occasionally usable because you really want to know how to use her in order to use her. Archibald, I would say he's good. He might as well be better than Serenoa, but I would go that far. Yeah, I would say Serenoa is not as great. Serenoa has Under Convictions banner which helps other characters in the party, but I would say Archibald is better because of the inescapable arrow and because of his great range. Archibald is very slow, but if you put Archibald on a tower, it's game over for the enemy. Inescapable arrow is amazing, his range is amazing, his damage is amazing. He has some options when enemies get close, and he can even kill some multiple enemies when they are close. But pretty much you want to snipe enemies with Archibald, and that would be easily achievable. Archibald is one of the most useful characters besides the ones that are primary, as I said. Cordelia would be Cordelia. Not sure why I called her Cordelia. So Archibald is pretty much the next one that is as easily gettable as Ezana and Medina. He requires 500 utility and 400 morality, which is not which is not too much of a barrier. But Cordelia, you would like to go to the chapter 15 sequence with Roland staying in Glenbrook, which is restricting, I mean, because you would need to go pretty much in 4 separate sequences in the 4 separate playthroughs you would like to do to complete the game, and one of those you would need to get Cordelia in, and the others would give you Travis, Trish and Milo, and those are not the 4 greatest characters, that would be certain, but you would pretty much need to wait for your 3rd or 4th playthrough to get 1 or 2 of those characters. You could get 1 character in each playthrough, and that's very restricting, and they will all get lower scores because of that. Cordelia, I would say, is occasionally useful. She's great occasionally, but she's occasionally useful because you could not be certain to have Cordelia in the moments of need. She has a great skill named Regen, and she has a good range, and she will be able to heal your characters from a long range, but the Regen is good because it heals a lot of health points. Overall, it heals for 3 turns, if I'm correct, and you could sustain 3 characters with Regen. That's amazing. That's more than your usual heal, but your usual heal costs 2 TP compared to Gio's 1 TP, and your massive heal costs 3 TP compared to Gio's 2 TP. The thing that Cordelia has is that if she does not move, she does not she restores 1 TP, which would pretty much make that make her more available to mass heal than Gio, in theory. But when you do not know the maps early on, in your first 1 or 2 playthroughs, you would really not be able to use her that that much, because you would really need to be flexible with your characters. You could not really afford to stick characters to a spot unless that spot is very well protected, and if you need to protect characters, they will most probably be damage dealers from distance like Archibald. It's rare for you to want to protect your healers and other characters. I could come up mostly with the mission where after which Dragan is killed, for example. Then you might want to keep a healer like Cordelia to be able to heal Dragan, but besides that, she was mostly used along with Jiwa. And when you are a second fiddle, that means that you are not a primary fiddle, basically. She's good, but the thing that she might not be available from the get-go makes her occasional for me. Travis is Travis is horrible, honestly. Travis is horrible. Travis is not that great. He does a lot of damage. He could take a lot of damage, but he's not readily available in your... He might not be available in your first or second playthrough, or even if he's available, you need to skip other characters. So that's always a thing that you need to take into account. Travis is not really that great of a character. He's not that fast. He does not deal too much damage. He could attack with Steel, which is the Mug skill, which is okay, because as I said, you would like to stock items and you would like to stock more money, which items are money. So that's not that bad, but I could not see myself use Travis instead of Erador, for example, or Travis instead of Sereno. That's not happening in any case. So Trish, I would say she's occasional because she's Archer and because she has the jump skill, maybe. She's not that great of a damage dealer. When you need to fight her, she's amazing because she has like a million turns for your one turn. But when you need to make her actually do something, she is not that great. She shares the negative of Cordelia and Travis, that she might not be available in your first or second or even third playthrough, and that was the case for me. I got her for the final 5 missions of the last playthrough I had in the game, which is a great spot to get a character that you will pretty much use once or twice, if that character is not outright broken, and she is not. So I would say she's occasional. You might want to use her in maps that you could get her do a lot of damage from above, like for example the Roselle village or the Source map even would be okay, but she never is a character that you would primarily choose to use because she's that great. No, she isn't. Maiwo, I would say, would be either occasional or good. And I would say she's borderline good, but she's occasional, mostly because, like Cordelia, mostly because she might not be available in your first playthroughs, and if you sequence your playthroughs by the logical order, like the first 3 not as great playthroughs in the beginning, and you finish with the golden route, which is not the case with me. I played the golden route second and I got Milo pretty early, but if you sequence your playthroughs in that paralogical order, I mean that pseudo-logical order, you really get Milo in the end. She's very good at dealing with physical damage dealers. She can charm, which is great. but she could not really do too much. Yeah, she could green mist, do a lot of damage to physical damage dealers because it's increased damage to them, if I'm correct. She could charm, but her damage is okay-ish. She's very mobile, but that's pretty much all. Yeah, also Milo is one of the 3 characters that has the most dodge, so she's not that bad, but I would not really rate her above occasional, mostly because her lack of availability. And also, if I'm correct, she needed items to use the green mist. Or no, that's the... No. Medina was the one that needed items to heal. So that's not great. Sir Maxwell. I would say he's good. He is not a primary character. He is good. He's above Sereno, even as he is not as readily available. You want to complete chapter 14 and have 1050 liberty and 750 morality. So Maxwell has a lot of damaging skills. He can damage multiple enemies with his spear. He can damage from distance. He can deal higher damage with a triple thrust. He can do high jump, which takes a lot of TP and is hardly usable in general maps, which you do not know as much and you could not control as much. So Maxwell is really usable, very good, but you might want to wait for your second playthrough to use him, because you would be hard pressed to get him as early, and even if you knew his stats, you'd need to wait at least for like 14 or 15 chapters, even if you knew his requirements and decided to get him and you knew what you did, and that's not the case in your first playthrough. So Maxwell is good. He has the resurrection. That makes him very good, but I would not say he's primary. His traverse makes him very usable in a lot of cases, but I would compare him to Archibald. He's very good, but he's not one of the characters that's a no-brainer. Yeah, he could be used everywhere, but he's not a character that you want to bring regardless of the occasion. You might not want to use him in some cases. Flanagan, I would say, is either good or high. He's a high occasional character to me, even higher than Milo, because his defending ability and his flight are great at protecting Hewitt at higher spots. He can also protect a lot of other characters, but he's very slow. He is very slow. Flanagan requires a lot of morality and utility to get the same amount as Maxwell, but Maxwell requires liberty and morality instead. So the same amounts I meant, but yeah, Flanagan is great at protecting characters. He does not take a lot of damage. He does not deal a lot of damage as well, but he could move with a massive attack each turn when you get his ability upgraded. The aerial assault is a 4 spots damage dealing skill that moves you, which is great, but he's occasional. You want to use him in some maps, but not every map. Groma, I would say she's horrible. She's not occasional. Yeah, she has occasions when you could use her if you wanted, but almost always there's a better option than Groma. I would really be hard pressed to choose Groma instead of Maxwell, for example. That would be just for the sake of using Groma. Groma does not have something that Maxwell does not have, honestly. She has a good dodge, but nothing more. And the good dodge is not enough to choose her over Maxwell. She has a skill that takes damage from distance, which is, as far as I know, less damage dealing than Maxwell's skill. She does less damage from the same distance, from short distance, I mean. She has a great skill at level 3 weapon, but so does Maxwell, and Maxwell's skill is better. Less TP for Groma, but still, that's not something that would really suffice. So Groma is really horrible. She would not be chosen primary in any map. She would not really be needed occasionally in any map. I could not see a case which require. I could not see a case in 4 playthroughs that says, yeah, this is the place for you to use Groma. That's not a thing. Avlora is good. She's good. She's either better or lower than Maxwell. I would say she's less good as Maxwell. She's less mobile, and that's a lot in this case. She's less mobile and does not have an attack from distance. Avlora is more tanky than Maxwell. She does a lot more damage than Maxwell from the short distance and no damage from long distance. She does not counter attack, and she does not have resurrect as well. But she is a great character. Avlora is a great character. Bloody Cross is a great skill, a hell of a skill. The thing with Avlora is that you need to do... Oh, sorry. The thing with Avlora is that you need to do the... you need to do the golden route in order to get her. And as I said, she might not be available for most of the game. But in my case, I did the golden route second, and doing the golden route gives her automatically to you, so she does not obstruct other characters besides Trish, Travis and Cordelia, who are not the greatest characters anyway, as I said. So you basically obstruct those 3 characters if you do this playthrough. And she's a great character. She might have been a primary character if she was a starter, because I would have known how to use her better. But yeah, she's a great character. She is in a tier with those 4 characters: Archibald, Maxwell, her, and Serenoa. They might be higher than good, but not as good as primary. Decimo is occasionally usable. Decimo, I would say like here maybe, like here. Decimo is occasionally usable. Decimo requires a lot of morality. He requires 1600 morality, 1600 if you prefer. Decimo does a lot of damage from distance. He does damage to a lot of enemies if you have a good luck. That's it. I mean, you need to have the enemies at a certain health level in order to damage them. You need the enemies to have their health either divisible by 3, 4, 5 or 7, which is not a great way to plan your stuff. And also he's barely sustainable because he needs to absolutely do nothing in a turn to get 3 TP refreshed, and doing nothing in your first playthroughs is a no-go. You would not really get him in your first playthroughs. You might be able to get him in your second, in the end, or in the beginning of your second playthrough, depending on your choices. But that's still not great. It's still not great to wait and not do anything with a character. He's very usable, I would say, in the map where you need to beat Patriot in the Whitehome streets. That's a map where he would be very great to use if you manage to make Jens send him to a castle with his ladder, and then use Decimo to just kill all the enemies when they appear. And even the mock battles that mimic that same battle as well. Giovanna. She's not a great character. Giovanna is horrible. Giovanna is the worst character in the game. Giovanna, she requires 1600 liberty. Giovanna is not reliable in terms of skills you might be able to use with her. She needs to stand on a certain terrain in order to use a skill. One of her best skills is requires grass terrain, which is pretty much impossible to find in this game besides a few maps. She needs cold terrain for her supreme skill, which she could not generate herself aside from using an item. She could cast a skill standing on a fire, which she could not generate by herself, but you would not really want to make your characters lose health points just to be able to cast their skills and also make them not mobile. That's a pretty huge setup in order to do a basic thing like doing damage. She could not heal unless she stands on a water tile, which is and also she could rock toss, yes, but that sucks. that's it. She's the worst character in the game. And we come to Quahog, who is the best character in the game. He is outright broken. Quahog requires a lot. He requires 1600 utility, which makes him a second playthrough character, but he is the best character in the game by far. Pretty much all of his skills, even the worst skills, are okay skills. Like time compensation was the name, maybe. The one that's pretty much G-less haste is not a bad skill. 1 TP, granting your character haste is fine. It's not a great skill, it's fine. But then on, he could swap places with enemies. I use that to snipe bosses like a lot. He could make a friendly character, including himself, move to 6 places distance for 2 TP, which is pretty much a free way to use light wave Quietus. He could stop time, which could make all the enemies stand in a certain spot, and then Quahog could go and kill them, or just go on and avoid the battle. Which is a 6 skill, but really not. You don't feel fine using it, honestly. then Quahog would have Endure Course, which is a pretty much great damage dealing skill, which is AoE if the enemy is stupid, but they almost never are. But it's not that great because it deals the damage after the turn ends. And the best skill, Reverse Space Time, which is the most outright broken skill in the game. You could reverse the positions, states, TP and everything of the characters except their lives to the spot where the previous turn of Quahog began or ended. I think ended. Anyway, yeah, I think ended. It does not matter because Quahog is not affected. Anyway, and you could pretty much, I showed that strategy, you could pretty much use this single skill with Julius Inheritor to manipulate the maps and snipe enemies one by one and kill them with no risk at all. Yeah, Quahog is amazing. He's the best character in the game. Even without this skill, even if you decide to take 2 of his best 3 skills, he would be a great character still. Yeah, also I forgot, he has pretty much 4 best skills, but if you take 3 of his best skills, because he has a reverse, a single target reverse space time, which is a skill that turns back time for a single character, does not restore TP but restores statuses and health point and position, which is also amazing. You could just go with a Maxwell or a Vlora and snipe some enemies and then get them back in your lines or stuff like that. Quahog is amazing. Outright the best character in the game, no contest. I would say Quahog plus 5 other characters would most probably be able to beat 10 characters from this roster, which says a lot. Like, Quahog is broken. So yeah, that's my tier list. It's very important to note again for a bajillion number of time, this is not a it's not a tier list that shows how strong a certain character is. For example, characters like, as I said, like Medina are very strong by themselves, but they are not sustainable because they need to use items and you don't want to use items in the sake of completion. This tier list is strictly oriented towards people who would like to complete the game 100%, do all 4 endings plus upgrade all characters to the max. That's the usage case of this tier list, and I would honestly stick to that tier list. I might want to make Benedict occasional, but he's a good character in the end, and I will honestly do that. I would go with yeah, no, Rudolph will stay up, but below Benedict. Rudolph will stay up because Rudolph is actually not as good as Benedict, because just Benedict makes your other characters very good. But if I needed to choose blindly a party of 10 characters, that's something that I would like to say. I would also want to... No, 6 seconds, just a second. I would like to know where's my favorite track? Where's my favorite track? Give me a second. Scales of Conviction. Unshaken Conviction. Is it that? Yeah, that's my favorite track. Okay, so if you would like me to choose 10 characters blindly to go in any map, that would be for certain Quahog plus Yulio because of Quahog. Then Hewitt, Erador. I would go with Corentin. I would go with Jiwa, 6 by now. And then I would go with Archibald, Maxwell, Avlora, and Serenoa. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That would be my blind 10 characters. I would have 2 healers with Jiwa and Quahog who can pretty much heal. And I might as well drop Archibald for Frederica, or drop, for example, Serenoa or Avlora for Jens. I might drop someone for Narf if I need additional healing, or drop someone for Benedict. I could not really see dropping someone for Rudolf unless I had a higher ground, and then the party would be Rudolf, Jens, Archibald, Hewitt, plus maybe 2 mages and 2 characters to keep those afloat, like Avlora and Erador. Quahog would be useful in pretty much every case. So yeah, that would be my blind 10. And as I said, Yulio would be used strictly because of Quahog. That's it. That's my final decision